understanding the Vedas, one has to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who has actually understood him surrenders unto him after many, many births. We find all these qualifications in the Prachetas. They underwent severe austerities and penances with water, and they did not take any food for a very long time. They practiced these austerities not for material benediction, but for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. One may engage in any business, material or spiritual, but the purpose should be the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This verse presents a perfect picture of Vedic civilization. People training to become devotees should be respectful, not only to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also to those who are elderly in knowledge, who are Aryans and actual devotees of the Lord. An Aryan is one who does not boast, but is an actual devotee of the Lord. Aryan means advanced. Formerly, those who claimed to be Aryans had to be devotees of the Lord. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita 2.2, Krishna chastised Arjuna by saying that he was speaking like a non-Aryan. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Kutastva Kshamalamitam Vishame Samupashtitam Anarya Jushnam Asvadyam Akirti Karam Arjuna. Supreme Person Bhagavan said, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the progressive values of life. They do not lead to higher planets, but to infamy." Arjuna, the Kshatriya, was refusing to fight despite being directly ordered by the Supreme Lord. He was thus chastised by the Lord as belonging to a non-Aryan family. Anyone who is advanced in devotional service of the Lord certainly knows his duty. It does not matter whether his duty is violent or non-violent. If it is sanctioned and ordered by the Supreme Lord, it must be performed. An Aryan performs his duty. It is not that the Aryans are unnecessarily inimical to living entities. The Aryans never maintain slaughterhouses, and they are never enemies of poor animals. The Prachetas underwent severe austerities for many, many years, even within the water. Accepting austerities and penances is the avowed business of those interested in advanced civilization. I'm going to read that sentence again. Accepting austerities and penance is the avowed business of those interested in advanced civilization. The word nirandhasham means without food. Eating voraciously and unnecessarily is not the business of an Aryan. Rather, the eating process should be restricted as far as possible. When Aryans eat, they eat only prescribed edibles. Regarding this, the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yunge bhakta prayachati Araham bhakti bharatam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. Thus, there are restrictions for advanced Aryans. Although the Lord himself can eat anything and everything, he restricts himself to vegetables, fruits, milk, and so on. This verse thus describes the activities of those who claim to be Aryans. I was born into darkness. By the grace of my spiritual master and devoted guardians, they have opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, and they've given me not only a new lease on life, but the tools with which to offer my life back to them. The devotees of the Lord are like desire trees, and I pray that they allow me to stay in their association, allow me to stay in your association, so that the prime goal of life can actually be delivered to my reluctant and nonsense self, pure love of Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. One time I was on book distribution in Phoenix, Arizona. We had I was visiting my parents and I went to a temple. And I actually stayed with some devotees one of the nights. Really nice devotees. Not a lot of devotees out there, but they have smallish Indian congregation. And these devotees let me stay. They had a guest house where Ganapati Swami would often stay. So I got to stay in the Maha of Ganapati Swami, which is pretty sad. So I was staying in this guest house, but then that evening, in Phoenix, they have it all over. It's called First Fridays. It's like a big art walk. But in Phoenix, it was like one of the biggest First Fridays in the country. The nice thing is that Phoenix can pretty much do First Friday art walks all year round because it's warm, even in winter, warm enough. So this art walk would block off, like 5 city blocks. I mean, it was huge. And people would just walk around. And so I went out there with the devotees. It was cool because it was my first time back in Phoenix at the art walk as a devotee. So I was there and we were doing Harinam. I was pretty much the one that led or played any instruments. So I was leading the kirtan. And then at one point, this man came up to me, like in kind of in between a kirtan, and he started talking to me about, he said, like, I really appreciate your Prabhupada or something like that. And he said, basically, he showed me this video, which was a hellaciously doctored up cut and paste lecture through the Prabhupada, where Prabhupada was speaking about the Aryan race, right? And it was cut up and stitched together in such a way to become some kind of Nazi propaganda, saying that Prabhupada was saying these things. And I was a newer devotee at the time, but it was quite special because I wasn't really so adept at memorizing verses at that point. I'm still not. But that verse from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks about Gunakama, Vibhagasha, it just came in my mind. And I started just like preaching to this guy, telling him like, no, like you've actually misunderstood the whole point. You've taken everything that Prabhupada's saying out of context. Right? And so 2 things made me think of that, specifically with this 3rd verse. Prabhupada's talking about Aryans throughout, like what does it actually mean to be an Aryan? Right, and clearly he's saying Aryans never maintain slaughterhouses. Aryans are not unnecessarily inimical to living entities. Right? This kind of bastardized idea that Hitler and the Nazis kind of had this conception of the Aryan race is simply a Vedic concept of what it means to be a super civilized, cultured person, taken completely out of context. Right? So, in the same way, the Prachetas are in the midst of their petitioning the Lord for the Lord's mercy, for the Lord's benediction. And in the midst of this petition, they're seemingly glorifying themselves. Right? We've accepted a spiritual master, we've offered respect to the Brahmanas and advanced devotees and personalities. We've offered our respects to them. We have not been envious to friends or brothers or anyone. We've also undergone. We fasted for a long time. Right? In one sense, taken out of context, 2 things can happen. One, we can see that, the Prachetas are just glorifying themselves. How awesome we are. They just did all these austerities. Prabhu, I just did Nirjala Kadshi. Great, Prabhu. I just, I remember, well, I can say it now because I think it's been a long enough time, but there was one time I'll just use it as an example. I was picking someone up or dropping someone off at a bus station. Some devotee was arriving. Anyway, there was this, I had these, when I first joined the movement, I had these yellow Crocs. I don't know where I got them from, but like, that was my thing. I had like these yellow Crocs. And I would, I would wear these yellow Crocs all the time. And they were ridiculous. They were like highlighter yellow. They were obnoxious as anything. Anyway, somehow or another I obtained these Crocs. But I was at this bus station and this homeless guy was there and he was kind of like, he was barefoot. And I gave my Crocs to him. And it felt really good. But immediately my mind was like, oh, you gotta like tell somebody about this. You gotta tell somebody you just did it. And I vowed at that point, I'm like, I'm not gonna tell anybody. And I haven't. I think I've maybe told this like once before in a context like this in a class. But it was, the point I'm telling is that how immediate the mind wants to take credit for something that it does good. Like I fixed the closet door the other day, and Dave and I were joking. It was like, oh, fix. I was so stoked that I fixed the closet door. Right? What to speak of doing things of actual substance, like performing severe austerities under the water, for thousands of years. Right? I fixed a closet door and I was puffed up. Right? So that's one thing. We can take that out. We can take it out of context in that sense. But I think even broader than that, one thing that I want to highlight is the context of their intention, right? Right. Prabhupada often gives this example of you can have many, many, many zeros, but if you don't have the one of Krishna in front of those zeros, it's still just going to be zero, right? And so in this case, we have this situation where, why are they performing all these things? Why are they even acknowledging and announcing all of these things? Because their desire, their requested benediction is that Krishna accepts those things as offerings to his lotus feet. When I read this verse this morning, I thought of that verse in the 10th canto, 10:14:36, where it says, Brahma is describing the exalted position of the residents of Vrindavan. He said, until one becomes your devotee, all of their material attachments and all of their material attachments, their homes and all the persons inside those things, their material attachments, they become thieves, right? Because my things have this tendency to take my time and attention, to take my focus off the real goal of life. So my material attachments become thieves. My home becomes prisons, right? Because in prison, there's a lot of activity going on, but there's actually no effect in the real world. Right? I could be a librarian. I could, do so many things in prison. Like I sometimes I think, and I have a godbrother actually who's in prison. He actually met the devotees in prison. He's in prison for life. And my Gurudev actually went to the prison and initiated him in like the meeting chamber. Like they did a fire yagya in their mind. It's far out. But anyway, I was corresponding with this godbrother of mine for a bit now, Balavan Nitai. And he's like the opposite example. Because, he's more free than people that, what's like the bougie area of Michigan? Ann Arbor?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. He's more free than people in Ann Arbor. Yeah, he's in prison for life, right? But what is the real prison? The real prison is that I live in a place that I'm not getting out of, and that my activities don't actually have any meaning in reality. Right? In prison, you can do so many things. You could be a librarian, you could be a chef, you could be I don't know if they let prisoners be chefs. Anyway, whatever, you can have a job in prison. But that money doesn't translate into the world outside of that prison. That experience hardly translates outside of that, out of that world in the prison, because you're a felon. You can hardly get a job after you get out of prison, the way our system is set up, right? So like that, our homes become prisons, because all of the activities I go into maintaining my home, I go into maintaining the things in my home. If I'm not a devotee, then it actually doesn't translate into anything substantial in reality, right? Brahma says, my affectionate feelings, right, they become foot shackles. Same kind of idea, because I'm chaining myself to dead matter, right? Unless I recognize that the centerpiece of all of those elements is Krishna, Right? Unless I put the 1 in front of all those zeros, those things won't actually help me at all. They'll just keep me bound up, trapped, and bereft. So in the same way, the Brahmacharis have performed all these austerities, and they're not wanting all of that to go to waste. They don't want all of it to go to the waste of inflating some sense of ego. Brahma had the same prayer, right? He said, I'm given such an important task. I'm given such a substantial task. I'm given so much power and opulence. I don't want to become conceited. Please bless me that I don't become conceited in my service. And the Brahmacharis are praying in a very similar way. I also like this point at the end of this purport, or in the midst of this purport, where Prabhupada is saying, accepting austerities and penances is the avowed business of those interested in advanced civilization. It's very austere in many ways, more austere to be expert, to be effective, to be successful, to be wealthy and competent and organized and engaged, and offer all of the results to Krishna, than it is to just renounce everything and live in a cave and just avoid the responsibility of those things. It's like fasting because there is no food is a lot easier than fasting next to the fridge full of food, right? So when I read this morning, it stuck out to me. Accepting austerities and penance is the avowed business of those interested in advanced civilization. We're in the material world. Dukhalaya Mashashvatam. It's going to be suffering anyway. It's been guaranteed on the sign as we entered. Krishna told us from the get-go, but I missed the sign, and for some reason I had this misdirected conception that life should be nice and easy and comfortable. I'm speaking personally, but it's not going to be. The material world is a place of reversals, and if I don't voluntarily create austerities for Krishna in my life, if I don't voluntarily create a situation that takes me out of the illusory zone of comfort that I want to stay in, then I'm going to be somehow or another, and more likely than not, it's going to be more of a rude awakening, right? Shooken from that illusion. So that part of the purport stuck out to me. And I also just want to say, Hare Krishna, everyone watching online. Please, we are seeing your comments, so if there's some reflection you're having from something that you hear, please do type something in and share this class, because Bhagavatam is good for everyone. When we got here, they're having a pre-game of Bhagavatam. They're doing the Bhagavatam before the Bhagavatam. That's how much nectar they're tasting in the Bhagavatam. Ujjwal and Gary and Ramanda. So share the Bhagavatam with everyone that you can. Okay. Verse 41. And I want to just thank you, Mr. Lokaram, because I feel like I've been getting the jackpots every time I give class. I get these verses that are just like, they're like the magnum opus, like, those purports that Prabhupada writes. I mean, every purport that Prabhupada writes, but in my experience, there's some that just hit me like a ton of bricks. So there's like these memorable quotes. This is one of those purports. So this verse says, Dear Lord, even great yogis and mystics who are very much advanced by virtue of austerities and knowledge, and who have completely situated themselves in pure existence, as well as great personalities like Manu, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva, cannot fully understand your glories and potencies. Nonetheless, they have offered their prayers according to their own capacities. In the same way, we, although much lower than these personalities, also offer our prayers according to our own capability. Purport. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Manu, the Father of mankind, and great saintly persons are also great sages, and also great sages who have elevated themselves to the transcendental platform through austerities and penance, as well as devotional service, are imperfect in knowledge compared to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the case with anyone within this material world. No one can be equal to the Supreme Lord in anything, certainly not in knowledge. Consequently, anyone's prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is never complete. It is not possible to measure the complete glories of the Lord, who is unlimited. Even the Lord himself in his incarnation as Ananta or Shesha cannot describe his own glories. Although Ananta has many thousands of faces and has been glorifying the Lord for many, many years, he could not find the limit of the glories of the Lord. Thus, it is not possible to estimate the complete potencies and glories of the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, everyone in devotional service can offer essential prayers to the Lord. Everyone is situated in a relative position, and no one is perfect in glorifying the Lord. Beginning with Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva down to ourselves, everyone is a servant of the Supreme Lord. We're all situated in relative positions according to our own karma, yet every one of us can offer prayers with heart and soul as far as we can appreciate the Lord's glories. This is our perfection. Even when one is in the darkest region of existence, he is allowed to offer prayers to the Lord according to his own capacity. The Lord therefore says in Bhagavad Gita, Mam hi partha vyapashuta ye pisya papayonaya striyo vaishas tata shudras te piyanti param gatim. O son of Pritha, those who have taken shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, as well as Shudras, workers, can approach the supreme destination. If one seriously accepts the lotus feet of the Lord, he is purified by the grace of the Lord and by the grace of the Lord's servant. This is confirmed by Shukadeva Goswami. Yene cha papaya yad apashrayasya sudhyanti tasmai Pavavishnave namaha. One who is brought under the lotus feet of the Lord by the endeavor of the Lord's servant, the spiritual master, is certainly immediately purified. However low-born he may be, he becomes eligible to return home, back to Godhead. I remember reading this my first time through Bhagavatam. Yet every one of us can offer prayers with heart and soul as far as we can appreciate the Lord's glories. I heard it said that Bhakti Tirtha Swami's mother would tell him, you have to pray till you mean it. Pray till you mean it, right? That this kind of, I've had the experience where I try and say some prayer and it just feels very dry, lip deep. I mean, like I'm just talking to air. I've also had the experience where it feels like Krishna heard that. Krishna heard that, not because of my potency and strength, but because of my helplessness and need. Just recently, I was hearing Dhanarada Swami, he was speaking about the doorways of prayer, 3 doorways of prayer. And what's super interesting is that I found this, I have a friend, I met him on a plane. He's a Mormon gentleman. Very nice, very wonderful man. And we were on a plane and we just had this beautiful dialogue on the plane. He came to Govinda's, we had lunch. I went to his church. The first time I ever went to a Mormon church, actually. And the service was super cool. It was about prayer, right? And it was the same, it was nice because the same type of formula, you could say, exists cross traditions, right? And that formula is, one, the first door is the exaltation of the desired object, right? The exaltation of God, the exaltation of the Lord. And we see this in starting at verse 22. That's when the Prachetas start their prayer. So verse 22, they start glorifying the Lord in the fact that his name is all auspicious, that he removes all material distresses. And for a few verses, they keep going. 24, they say, some of the highlights from their prayers, that the Lord's brain is always planning for the deliverance of the fallen, conditioned souls. Right? That the Lord's brain is always planning for this. So Prabhupada translated. 25 through 26, right? They enter the next stage of prayer, which is continued exaltation of the Lord. They start describing the Lord's beauty, what he's wearing, how beautiful he is, right? So the first, I would say, half of their prayers, almost half of their prayers, is this element of glorification, right? That namaste, not me, but you, right? Getting myself out of the center, getting myself out of the way, and in this process of prayer, first entering into really appreciating the Lord. And we see this throughout the Bhagavatam. If we study the prayers of the Bhagavatam, that's how they began. They began by first glorifying the Lord. Then, 27, they start to talk about how we are fallen into ignorance and how unqualified they are, how broken they are, in spite of anything that they may have done or anything that they were attempting to do, or whatever their family background was, or the sons of a king. Right? In spite of all that, they're falling into ignorance, into darkness. Right? They start to describe the great lack of their qualification. Right? And then the third is gratitude and feeling the mercy. The third door of prayer is gratitude and feeling the mercy. And that's coming in this 31 through 33. They're praying for the benediction to always hear Krishna Katha, or inadvertently, actually they say this directly, to always be in association with devotees. Yesterday, Lokram was discussing this point, that always being in the association with devotees. Right? Praying always to hear Krishna Katha. And then today, in today's prayer, praying that all of their austerities and penance, and everything that they've done good, that Krishna accepted at his lotus feet. So this was like the doorway of prayer, the process of prayer. One other thing I forgot to mention that this purport, reading it through right now, really triggered my memory about anyone from whatever position can offer prayers with heart and soul. Prahlad Maharaj had a very similar realization too. He felt very unqualified in front of all of these great personalities, the demigods. And as they insisted and pushed him forward to pray to this very fierce form of God, Prahlad wasn't scared, but he felt unqualified. He says, how am I going to offer prayers? I'm from a demoniac family. I don't speak Sanskrit fluently and eloquently. I'm not educated. I'm just a young, small child. But then he remembered Gajendra. He said, Gajendra is an animal. And still the Lord accepted his prayers. Right? So like this, in our prayers, even if we go through this process of glorifying the Lord, of describing our lack of qualification, and then expressing gratitude and appreciation for receiving the mercy, our content will always fail. Our content will appreciate the fullness of God, but our intent can always be successful. The content of our prayer will always be insufficient. The content of our prayer is imperfect, as Prabhupada is saying in this purport. Even great personalities, what to speak of God himself in the form of Ananta, his glorification is imperfect because it's incomplete. Therefore, he keeps going. But the intent is what Krishna is actually interested in. The content will always fall short. So, I remember when I first read this, that was the feeling of great confidence. It built a lot of confidence in me that from wherever I'm at, even in the most fallen and wretched position, I am allowed, right? Prabhupada said, he is allowed to offer prayers to the Lord according to his own capacity. What is my capacity to offer prayers? Let me do that, right? What is my capacity to do service? Let me do that. Right? Let me not be scared or hesitant to do some service because I don't feel qualified yet. No. Let me do the service to the best that I can do. And Krishna, like David was saying the other day on Sunday, Saturday, give something for Krishna to work with. Let me take a step and let Krishna mold me. But if I don't step, if I don't pray, then there's nothing for Krishna to correct or mold or bring out deeper. Right? So I gotta put myself out there, put myself on the line. And I like this, offer essential prayers to the Lord. So Krishna is Bhagabrahmi Janardana, means he grabs the essence. Grahi means grab, right? He grabs the bhava. He grabs the essence of our heart and he pulls that out. Becomes the words and the actions and the services become the vehicle with which to deliver the contents of our heart, which we may not even be aware of. Because I'm so, fuddled up in my material situation, I may not even be aware of my most internal and underlining desire for sincerity. My Gurudev told me, I was asking about this idea of I don't really feel sincere sometimes and I feel kind of shallow and superficial. And he says, well, look for your sincerity. Look for your sincerity. And the act of even looking for your sincerity is a sign of sincerity. And Krishna is expert at finding our sincerity. But we have to position it somewhere to, we have to even somehow have the desire to give that essence, that sincerity to Krishna for him to really be able to extract it. Otherwise, he sends his devotees who come seeking after us. And that's what I like at the end of that purport. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada's emphasizing that one who is brought in the lotus feet of the Lord by the endeavor of the Lord's servants, the spiritual master, is certainly immediately purified, however low-born he may be. Right? So it's the endeavor of the Lord's servant. And that's what devotees do. That's what as devotees, we are meant to facilitate for people. That we can somehow give them an opportunity to appreciate Krishna, to appreciate the devotees, to appreciate the process of Krishna consciousness, to somehow offer some essential prayer in spite of whatever situation they find themselves in. So read verse 42. Dear Lord, you have no enemies or friends, therefore you are equal to everyone. You cannot be contaminated by sinful activities, and your transcendental form is always beyond the material creation. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because you remain everywhere within all existence. You are consequently known as Vasudeva. We offer your respectful obeisances. Prabhupada breaks down this word, Vasudeva. Vas means to live. The Lord is everywhere. And that's why he can accept our prayers. Prabhupada also describes how the Lord is never contaminated by my sinful action or by his apparent action within this material world. The Lord's not contaminated by those things. So this idea that I'm not qualified to go before the Lord because I'm not pure enough. I'm not qualified to pray to the Lord because I'm not pure enough. Right? It's actually it can be understating the Lord's potency to purify us. And that's why I'm not praying to the Lord to impress him with my eloquence. I'm praying because I'm helpless. I'm praying because I have nothing else. And that type of prayer, right? What's the verse, Bhagavatam? That mood of having nothing, akinchana gocham. That type of prayer is that in and of itself is a purifying process. It's the sun of divine mercy evaporating the sinful nonsense in my heart. Verse 43. Maitreya uvacha iti prachetubir abhishtuto hari pritastatyaha shanya vatsalah anichathan yanam atripta chakshinam yayau swadhamana bhavarga virya. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the surrendered souls, being thus addressed by the Prachetas and worshipped by them, replied, may whatever you have prayed for be fulfilled. After saying this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose prowess is never defeated, left. The Prachetas were unwilling to be separated from him because they had not seen him to their full satisfaction. Purport. The word anapavarga virya is significant in this verse. The word ana means without, pravarga means the materialistic way of life, and virya means prowess. The prowess of the Supreme Personality of Godhead always contains 6 basic opulences, one of which is renunciation. Although the Prachetas desired to see the Lord to their full satisfaction, the Lord left. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this is an exhibition of his kindness to innumerable other devotees. Although he was being attracted by the Prachetas, he left. This is an example of his renunciation. This renunciation was also exhibited by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he stayed with the Dvaita Prabhu after taking sannyas. All the devotees there wanted him to stay a few days longer, but Lord Chaitanya left without hesitation. The conclusion is that although the Supreme Lord has unlimited kindness for his devotees, he is not attached to anyone. He is equally kind to his innumerable devotees all over the creation. I thought too, in the CC, when Mahaprabhu is going to go on to his South Indian tour, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has just become a sold-out Gaura Bhakta, to the point where he wants to change the Bhagavatam because it implies liberation, and he says that's nonsense. We should change it to Bhaktipad, not Muktipad. Sold out. He's nothing in his life matters more than the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. And Chaitanya is planning to go, and in so many instances, the devotees have, manipulated the situation so the Lord hasn't yet left. But he gets the permission and decides to leave, and he walks away on his South Indian tour, and immediately Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, an old man, faints, falls to the ground, but Mahaprabhu didn't even turn around. Like a lightning bolt, he just left. There's many instances in the CC and in the Bhagavatam that display this opulence of renunciation. So I've one question about this, right? How is the Lord leading his devotees? His kindness. Right? So I want to put that question on the table for discussion. Prabhupada explained Jiva Goswami that for the Lord, he has innumerable devotees, and so there's many devotees to go see. But how else because we hear also that everything that the Lord does is auspicious. So how is the Lord leading the Prachetas after they just offered these beautiful prayers? And he said, may everything you prayed for happen, and then he just disappears. Right? We have other examples of this in the Bhagavatam. How is that the Lord's kindness? That can be up for discussion also, and then also just any reflections or any questions or points to further clarify or discuss at this point. Yep.
Any nice class. I like this point. You brought it up in the beginning or near the beginning and then touched back on it a few times about renunciation, it being a more powerful form of renunciation to actually become expert at something or to, gain some stuff and then have to use that rather than just never being around it. And I think coming from my perspective as a spiritual aspirant, I very much had the latter thing, this idea that just giving up in the beginning is the highest thing, because that's, I guess from a Western perspective, as a young man, you're kind of like hoping for that. You're like, yeah, I can just do the best thing first, and just jump right in, and now, I've already done it. But you quickly realize that no, actually, that's not real renunciation. That's more opportunism. You know, it's just, you're just taking advantage. And it's a subtle thing. It's not that I was wrong for doing that, but on the back end, you realize that that's not real renunciation. That's just kind of trying to mold my situation in such a way that I can now appear to be the best. Whereas then the real hard work comes in actually gaining some propensity for something, gaining some resources, and then being able to use those in a way that's actually productive and conducive to both your life and the people around you. And, you know, I think that's really the hallmark of maturity for a human being, what to speak of a spiritual aspirant. And it just reminds me of the way Vedic culture is set up, that from a very early age, because it's already decided what you are by where you're born and all of these things, you become an expert very fast. And so then renunciation is actual renunciation if it does take place. Because when you have something to give up, it can merely be called renunciation. But if you don't have anything to give up, it's not really renunciation, it's just poverty. So it's like you said, if
It sucks to suck.
if there's no food, you're not renouncing anything. You just can't eat. You know, but if there's a fridge full of food, and I think again for the Hare Krishnas or for any of us that have lived in a temple, that's one of the prime ones that you think, you know, you realize you're not very renounced because you live next to a buffet. And it's hard. Like it's hard to live next to a buffet. It's taken me years and I'm still not very good at it. I'm better than I was for the first 2 years. But yeah, so I was just appreciating this point. And there are a couple other things with this. But maybe you have something to shoot back on that.
No, yeah, I appreciate the reflecting that point, because it's it is a real. That, I mean, that's the whole thing in Bhagavad Gita. This really is the I would say in many ways quintessential understanding that Bhakti gives to the world about renunciation. Right? It's that Arjuna, you're supposed to do your duty. You're supposed to fight very expertly, and then give all the results to me. And I appreciate you articulating the word that it's the mature place for spiritualists to aspire to. I appreciate your reflection. I don't have much more. Anything else that?
That I wanted to appreciate one point, the early part about the prison, and that banging just banged it out of my head what I was thinking.
The prison.
Yeah, the prison, the loud clanging of the bars. But then what Ujjvala just mentioned reminded me of a kind of pet peeve I have in devotee sangha. It's a kind of backhanded dismissal or pseudo compliment when we see somebody doing a service and we say, "Oh, that's their nature."
Yeah.
And what I've recognized about this is that it's the most difficult thing to offer your nature to Krishna, something that you're comfortable doing and good at. To make that a wholesome offering is hard, as is evinced in the Bhagavad Gita. And rather than kind of dismiss somebody's hard work and effort in offering their nature, to recognize the austerity of doing something that ostensibly could bring you a lot of material joy, profitability, etc. Really offering that to the devotees and to Krishna as a service is the biggest yajna. And honoring that when we see somebody doing it, instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, that's easy for them because it's their," Ujjval can study 8 hours a day at Bhagavatam because it's his nature. That's the kind of compliment that I'm noticing. It's a subtle envious vibe. So just to kind of be aware of that for ourselves and for others.
I also have a little triangle here. Yeah, on that, there's another kind of, to use the word again, like opportunistic thing there that I noticed with the same thing, is that what are you saying when you say that's somebody's nature? You're also saying it's not mine. I don't have to do that because it's not my nature. And like, I recognize it more and more with myself, is that I'm constantly looking for ways to make things as easy as possible. And, just say, yeah, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that. I can compartmentalize that over there. They can handle that because it's more their proclivity to do it. And it's really kind of antithetical to the mood of, surrender in the highest sense, but even more practically speaking, just getting things done when they need to get done. And it's so easy to, I guess it's just human nature to kind of be fickle and twist everything up in such a way that you get what you want whenever you want it. And you have to constantly be on guard from that, because it doesn't matter how, I'm just reminded of Amara Jivana. What is that? Amara Jivana, Sadhava that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this: I'm the most sinful, and everything that I do is sinful. Why? Because even if I get a good thing, even if I get something that's useful, I use it for something bad. I find a way to twist it up and make it into something that's bad, means an opportunity for me to keep doing what I want to do versus what I know I should be doing. And I think as we grow as devotees, then that voice becomes a little louder, like what you should be doing, the direction you should be going. And it becomes more of a complicit, like conscious effort to ignore that than before when you're ignorant, even when you're quite ignorant. Then it's like you can't really be blamed because you're just in the maelstrom. And after a certain point, everybody comes to this level like, all right, I know what I need to be doing, and I should be doing that. And I'm not, because I don't want to. And I think I just find that pretty difficult.
I was speaking to a god brother of mine, and a person that has essentially stopped practicing. And because for a while I hadn't confronted my lack of clarity about their situation. I had withheld the fact that I was uncomfortable and just kind of unclear about where they stood. And so I decided to have a direct conversation with them, and it was actually very, very helpful. And but I was asking them in specific relationship to taking initiation, being having a spiritual master, and I appreciated their reflection because it felt very honest in one sense, but it was recognition of their motivation for getting initiated. Wasn't that there was some kind of deep connection as a disciple, but is this idea of they wanted to do something in their life, and they felt that this person was never going to tell them to stop doing that thing. Because that thing that they were good, that thing that they wanted to keep doing, they were good at. They found some identity in that. Mm-hmm. And they felt, if I get initiated by this person, that person's never going to tell me to stop doing this thing. They're reflecting that it was actually just, I wanted to just control my situation. So to what level is that the full reality? I'm not sure, but it did highlight for me, this kind of, I just want to control my situation and be in charge and not allow things to leave my realm of sense gratification too far, whatever my sense gratification looks like. Yeah. Any other, Lokram?
Prahlad.
Is it on this topic?
Yeah.
We had asked about this, how is it Krishna's mercy to leave his devotee?
Mm.
And we do see a similar exchange between Krishna and the gopis before the Rasa Leela. And apparently Krishna says that it's because he wants to draw out deeper and fuller love, intensify their love for him, and so he leaves. So I guess that's our answer to that, is that it's Krishna's way of helping his devotee come to the most perfect stage of love, to put them into a state of separation. So Yeah, that's kind of the official answer.
Narada also.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Sri Krishna gives a beautiful commentary to that.
Well, Mahaprabhu basically answered what I was going to ask. Because towards the end, you were like, oh, Mahaprabhu just left. And then you think, oh, that's very cold. Mahaprabhu just left his devotees in Puri to go to South India. And then I was thinking of the point of Sri Krishna Harshni that the devotee brings the Lord under his control. So how can we, like, we could say, the devotees in Puri, Lord Chaitanya was completely endeared to them, right? But the thing is, how could he just, if he's under their control or he's bound by love, how I guess like what Mahaprabhu said to increase the devotion, he just left. But I guess maybe you could go more into that.
Yeah. Well, in this purport too that we read today, Prabhupada, he didn't elaborate so much on it, but there's a sentence that said, the Lord has innumerable devotees everywhere, and he's equal to all of them. So it's like the Lord wants to go see the devotees elsewhere are like pining for the Lord's association as well, right? So simultaneously, the Lord is going towards devotees elsewhere and pulling out, refining the love of his devotees that he's leaving. And I thought too of the example when, again, Mahaprabhu was trying to go to Vrindavan for 2 years. He's trying to go to Vrindavan. And every year, every time he's like, okay, I want to go, and the devotees are like, Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma are like, well, it's Kartik, you should stay here, or it's Chatra Mas, you should stay here, it's the rainy season, just stay here. And then after that, he's like, well, it's Vijay Panchami or whatever, like whatever the next festival was. I remember one time Nimai, Nimai from the 24-hour Kirtan, Italian devotee. Yeah. Was he ever here, Nimai? No. Anyway, he was in Denver, and that was probably one of the greatest years in Denver. Like we had these Harinams that were just like, it was like a Harinam almost every day somewhere, and they were fat. Like it was just stacked. The temple was stacked. And but he was like trying to leave, like he had to leave. But there was always like another festival, another event. And then it happened, like he attempted to leave like 3 times and his like ticket messed up. So like he had to come back and stay for another week, like reschedule his ticket. When again, like something happened, like he just couldn't leave. It was exciting. But I digress. The point is, so then Mahaprabhu was trying to leave for Vrindavan, and finally, he says, I can't go unless you give me permission. And so the devotees gave him permission. Then when he's leaving, Gadadhar Pandit leaves his service of Gopinath and starts following behind Mahaprabhu. And for a while, Mahaprabhu says, you have to go back. And Gadadhar says, fine, I'm not going with you. I want to go to Vrindavan too. I'm going by myself. You go wherever you want to go. I'm going. But he was still following Mahaprabhu. And finally, before Mahaprabhu, I forget where exactly it was, but he was needing to cross a river. He said, Gadadhar, if you don't go back, then I'll be blaspheming because you've given up your service of Gopinath. And it's this like very heartbreaking moment. So this point of like Mahaprabhu like forcing his devotees to go back. I think I'm kind of trailing off of the question a little bit, but this idea in the purport that Prabhupada mentioned, Jiva Goswami mentions, where it's that there are innumerable devotees all over the world, or all over that are pining for the Lord's association. So the Lord is bestowing the mercy upon the devotees in South India as well, not just staying with the devotees in one place. Did Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is there something that you can add to the conversation from that purport you were mentioning?
With Narada Muni, it's just really beautiful. So oftentimes the way we hear that verse is that Krishna comes, he gets the vision, and then he goes away, and then Narada Muni cries, tries to do the meditation again, and he's unsuccessful. And then he hears a voice from the sky that says, you won't be able to see me again in this life because you're not perfect. But what Sri Vishwanath says there is he says, people who are imperfect, who